Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. This is the Diversity in AI Fireside Chat. I am your host, Matthew Ramirez, and we are very pleased to have with us Laura Montoya. I'll say a few words about Laura by way of introduction. Laura is the daughter of a Colombian refugee who immigrated to the US to escape guerrilla warfare in the late 1980s. She was raised by a single mother in a low-income household where she developed the passion and tenacity to graduate high school at 16 years old. Laura is a first-generation graduate from university and earned a degree in biological and physical sciences at Eastern Michigan University. She has launched several initiatives in AI and research. The Demystifying AI Symposiums, Latinx in AI, the annual workshop at the Neural Information Processing Systems, also known as NeurIPS, Accel AI Institute, and Research CoLab. She is a director with Women Who Code, an advisor for Udacity's AI and Data Nano degree, and an affiliate with the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard Law. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
So I guess to get started, I guess the most basic question would be, what initially interested you in artificial intelligence?
Yes, so I've always had a very keen interest in mathematics and the sciences. Ever since I was a very young girl, I was always interested in more of the STEM education when I was in elementary school and primary school. And I would definitely float more towards attending museums with my mom and my sister. And when it came to like toys to play with, I found myself wanting all those little robotic kits and wanting to play oftentimes with the boys, building things. And it just felt very natural to me as I got older. And originally, my academic background, as you said, is in the biological and physical sciences. I wanted to really study more of the core fundamentals of mathematics. And I had a lot of interest in human development as well, especially when it came to neurobiology, and I was interested in how the mind and the brain worked. And as I got older and I learned more about artificial intelligence, I learned how it really is the summation of many different areas of the sciences, and it takes into account a lot of obviously core mathematics and a lot of physics, and of course a lot of neurobiology. At least a lot of the theories that have been developed in AI and machine learning come from the fundamentals of neurobiology and ideas around the brain. So that felt like also a very comfortable and convenient transition for me. After I moved to the Bay Area, I actually started working at the Mathematical Sciences Research Institute, and I was there for a couple of years. And then I transitioned into tech full-time, doing software engineering. I was working at Intuit on the QuickBooks Online platform. And from there, I decided I really wanted to dedicate more of my time to AI and machine learning, and that's when I started my own organization.
And when was that you started your own organization?
It's been about 6 years ago now, so quite some time.
Yes. Did you end up building any robots?
I have built some robots. A lot of them are more toy robots, nothing for research purposes yet. I'm looking to get a 3D printer so that I can actually manufacture a lot of the parts myself and print them at home. That would be the ideal. There are a few open source projects now, especially that use 3D printed parts when it comes to the servos and a lot of the exterior body for the robots. So I would like to play with some of those as well before I start building my own.
And have your priorities changed, or have you refined your focus since the pandemic began?
Oh boy. I think everyone's priorities have changed a little bit. You know, I think anytime a major life occurrence such as that happens, you do want to reflect on what are the most important things to you, your values, and how you want to move forward in society. And so while my work hasn't specifically shifted towards addressing issues with COVID or the coronavirus, I have found that I am more interested in applications of AI and machine learning in healthcare. But I think that's probably similar for a lot of people, whether they're in the industry or not. Our organization has continued to grow, and a lot of the programs that we are running have, been very strong and so far have not been affected very much due to the shifts in the economy or the shifts due to the virus as well, which is great. And fortunately, everyone that's worked with our organization was already working remotely, so that transition hasn't been too hard for our organization as well. And we have been able to find that our strength within the community has really grown. So especially for the Latinx and AI community, we feel that we have been able to connect people in many different kinds of ways rather than just in person or at meetups like we had been in the past. We've had people that have been able to focus a lot more on research and their educational goals due to this kind of shift to working at home and meeting online so much more often. So that has been a good transition for us. So we're really trying to count our blessings, during this rather tough time.
And are you seeing, related to this COVID point, are you seeing an increase in AI entrepreneurship around uh, COVID or around healthcare issues in the companies that you look at or that you work with?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Obviously, when it comes to dealing with the virus and trying to help either create a vaccine or help people who potentially need to be on respiratory care or a ventilation system, AI and machine learning can assist in those ways as well. So for a lot of people, they have been more focused on trying to create ventilators that will assist people that have trouble breathing, that are more automated. For them, it's really been about stepping away from the more expensive automatic systems, trying to develop those things at the lowest cost possible. Being able to see the innovation that has come across in places that have had limited access to technology, but they're still able to address these problems has been very amazing. And we've been happy to assist in any way that we can for those researchers and engineers.
Yeah, related to the point about developing countries, I don't remember who said it, but there's a line that goes, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Exactly, yes.
And I guess on that point and related to AI, what challenges did you face getting into AI? Are there challenges that you feel are or have been unique to the Latinx community? Could you say a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, for me personally, I do come from a more non-conventional background. Obviously, having come from the biological and physical sciences, being a woman, being a person of color, and kind of first generation on my father's side, all of these things, not having gone to what would be considered an Ivy League university, I would say all of those things, when working in Silicon Valley and going into AI and machine learning, can be held against you in some circumstances, in certain environments, but not in all of them. I've been very fortunate as well to find and really create a community for myself where people are accepting and willing to work with you and want to hear what you have to say because they value that diversity of thought and that diversity of experience. So that has been really rewarding for me personally. When it comes to the Latinx community, I think like a lot of other underrepresented groups, you find oftentimes, especially when dealing with issues around representation and around data, it is hard to find your niche and it is hard to find your community. And then also when you're trying to apply AI and machine learning technology to your local community, oftentimes it isn't necessarily readily available for you, right? So even if potentially there's an API or something that has been developed by a large company or even a startup, it's been developed on data that is very limited or very biased. And so if you try to apply it in your community or for standards that aren't necessarily represented within that machine learning model, then it's not going to be very accurate and it's not going to work for that specific application and for that group of people. So I think those have been the largest barriers to entry so far for the average researcher or engineer. Through my work with the Latinx and AI organization, we've been doing work now with a lot of research institutions and universities all throughout Central and South America. And we found that they have been utilizing machine learning for a very long time. There's a lot of very well-known universities that have been doing this work for a long time. They haven't gotten that recognition that potentially someone who's graduated from MIT or Stanford or Harvard has gotten, or any other US university as well. And then also their local governments do not invest as much in research and development as the US does, or has at least in the past. So for us, we have also found that oftentimes this phenomenon known as brain drain will happen, where someone who is highly educated in their home country will then leave after they attend a graduate program because they're in search of a higher paying job or more security, or they want to get that recognition in somewhere like the US or Canada, Europe, or even Asia. And so we have found that there has been a lack of mentorship that is created within these different countries. And then people have to seek again outside sources to find that mentorship and that support that they need. And it just continues to create this system, unfortunately.
We have a question from the audience. This one is from Jose. Do you
Yes.
have any advice for companies to improve diversity in AI? And maybe there are two parts, because you talked a little bit about diversity in training data and what that can mean for applicability of these systems, but then there's also
Yes.
diversity on the AI teams themselves. Could you speak to both of those points?
Oh, of course. A lot of the diversity missing on AI teams comes from a lack of recruitment. A lot of recruiters will say, well, we haven't been able to find the people that, identify as, Latinx or as Black or as a woman that has the background that we're looking for, has the education that we're looking for, or is as well published. And unfortunately, that just means that they haven't looked hard enough in a lot of circumstances, especially nowadays, right? There are organizations such as my own, the Latinx and AI initiative. There's the Black in AI organization, the Women in Machine Learning, Queer in AI. So if there is any subset of diversity that you are missing from within your company or your culture, it's there. You can find it. You just have to reach out to the right groups of people, and then from there, obviously, do the work, right, to hire those individuals. And through the mentorship programs that we have developed and that these other organizations have as well, if you found that maybe the people that you're looking at aren't quite at the level that you would want them to be, then there's no reason why you can't mentor them to become those individuals that you would like to see them as in order for them to work at your company. And so for us, what we do through our mentorship program, it does provide a great value both to the individuals that are receiving mentorship, and then also the companies that are doing the mentoring and the researchers that are doing the mentoring as well. And so what we do is we have mentors and mentees sign up. It's for a 3-month period. The obligation is only to meet officially with your mentor or mentee once per month via phone call like Zoom or chat, video, however you would like. It doesn't have to be Zoom. And then from there, be available to talk via email or Slack or WhatsApp. The main focus of the program is to really improve something within that individual's career. So if they are more dedicated to research, it would be specifically looking at a research problem in which that mentor has a specialization in and can kind of assist in the direction that the mentee would like to go in. If it's a more specific career question, so something like getting a job that's a little bit higher up in their field, or maybe transitioning into a PhD program, or working for a new company, then of course that mentor can talk about their specific experience having done that thing. And we really try to match mentors and mentees based on both the mentee's interest and career goals, and then also that mentor's experience as well. So, and I know again, a lot of these other organizations do the same thing or very similar. They have a similar process. So that's another great way to increase the diversity within your organization, is to ensure that you're participating in programs such as ours and these other organizations as well, to really reinforce the people that are already working within the field or are trying to break through, that want that opportunity and can add value to your company. So in a lot of ways, and unfortunately, it is just, you have to do the work, right? If you're really dedicated to diversity, you have to do the work to bring those people in. And you have to also make sure that burden isn't just put on people of color or people from underrepresented backgrounds, because then of course it becomes more of a burden for them, and then they have less opportunity to really reinforce their own professional skills so that they can be considered just as good as everyone else in the field as well, right? So that's a really key part. But for the other question, and more specifically about diversity within data, again, I think the key there is doing the work. I mean, I know that's a very simple thing to say, but when you consider how you get data collection, you can't just utilize what is readily available within the media or what is readily available within society. Obviously, there already is so much bias that's built in, and so many problems that have been perpetuated throughout history because of this bias within our society. And so you have to recognize that both within yourself and then within your culture and within your community. And only when you can do that can you then look at data objectively and say, okay, is this the right data to use to solve this problem? Will this be applicable to any group of people that potentially this software, this algorithm is going to be utilized on? And then how can I ensure that that problem does not persist going forward into the future? So, yeah.
I think that's a wonderful answer. Thank you for that. And although it may sound simple of just doing the work, I think you're right that a lot of things are problem specific and making sure that
Yes.
you have the right data for the task. There are no shortcuts there.
Right.
I want to go back to something you mentioned, which was dedication to diversity among companies, because I mean, especially recently, we've seen a lot of talk. We've seen a lot of companies talk about their commitments to diversity.
Yes.
How do you think about dedication to diversity? Do you see that the actions that couple those words are really widespread, or do you see that it sort of stops at talk, or that people maintain a general attitude about it, but that there's not as much implementation? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I do see a lot of talk, and I do see a lot of initiatives that are starting, and that companies are saying they want to do better, and they want to take responsibility, and they want to really help those that have not had that opportunity as of yet. But there is a difference between really inviting someone to a party and then asking them to dance. And that's an analogy I've heard before when it comes to terms of diversity, right? It's one thing to say, okay, we would like you to work for a company. It's another thing to actually celebrate who you are as an individual, your background, your community, and your interests, right? If you take someone who is very, very different from you and you invite them into your group or your community, and then you expect them to act just like you and to fit right in with, the culture that you already have developed without their input, then they're not going to fit in very well, right? Some people try really hard, right? And they do it for some time, but eventually they get tired and they don't want to pretend anymore. And I think that that's just part of reality. And that's part of, unfortunately, the system that we have had for a very long time. And that's oftentimes why women and people of color will leave the tech industry. And we have seen that happen over and over again since the 80s. And it's very unfortunate. And so if a company is really dedicated and they want to make a difference, they have to, again, not only invite someone in and pay them a reasonable salary, not just for their experience, but for the job that they're hiring them for, giving them the opportunity to really perform and learn and grow in that position, but then also to celebrate their culture and who they are as individuals, and really let them be that person. So, and that's way easier said than done. So, that's, again, just doing the work.
I think you've articulated that very beautifully. And that's something that I think for a lot of people is very deeply felt. So then as larger companies think about hiring in this area in AI, like there's of course team dynamics, there's of course diversity, but there's also that the field itself is evolving very quickly. And do you see that AI will be a component of organizations, or will it really become the theme of organizations? And do you see it as something that will be something more modular, like a data science group, or is it something that would really just define how an organization operates entirely?
So I think that really depends on your definition of AI, right? And it's such a broad term and such a broad field. And as you said, it is evolving incredibly rapidly. So I think for a lot of startups, they have made it their theme. right? Because it's something that has been hyped very heavily over the past 10 years. And it made, the incorporation of AI made it easier to raise funding. It made it easier to look like you're doing something that is considered an exponential technology that potentially you are going to advance and grow and gain all the consumers and increase market share as quickly as possible, right? If you utilize this new amazing technology. So I think any company that has said, okay, this is really what my company is doing and it's just focused on AI, that's a wonderful thing, but also they have to consider that AI takes a long time to develop, especially if you're actually trying to create anything that's a really sophisticated system. It's going to take a long time to develop. Now, if you talk about more traditional forms of AI, things like machine learning, and even aspects of AI that have been around a really long time, but maybe have not incorporated things like deep learning in the past. So now you're seeing deep learning built into more areas of traditional machine learning, like natural language processing and computer vision. If you take a more traditional company and you start applying these newer areas of artificial intelligence, or even like deep reinforcement learning to those older methodologies, you'll find that it becomes something that's more systemic, something that's more practical, and something that's actually going to advance that technology moving forward into the future, while just ensuring that the company is staying kind of up with the times and that they're not falling behind, right? And so I think that that's actually more common, especially for larger companies and institutions nowadays. But more than anything, I think that for a lot of people, if you're just getting into the field, it's a curiosity, right? It's something that's very much of interest. And again, just like myself, as you learn about AI at first, you find that, well, it really is part of everything. Like there's no aspect of your daily life almost that doesn't use AI or machine learning in some way, whether that has to do with like ordering food, right, to be delivered to your door, or if that has to do with the way that our systems are run in our government. Oftentimes now there are machine learning algorithms that are applied. If that talks, if you're thinking about your healthcare and the technologies that are used by your doctor in order to diagnose any issues that may be wrong with you, obviously checking your Gmail every day, right? Machine learning is built into those systems already as well. So the more that you learn about AI, the more you realize, okay, this is actually something that is just part of, who we are as a society, and it's something we have to be comfortable with, and that you really have to understand.
We have another question. Do you see AI phasing out some jobs in the future? How do we prevent underrepresented communities feeling the brunt of being phased out?
Yes, definitely. So this is an issue that has come up anytime we have had a revolution, especially a technological or industrial revolution in any way, is that question of, will we lose jobs? And of course, the answer is always yes, we will lose jobs. And the jobs that will be lost are the more manual labor, tedious, meticulous types of jobs, right? And unfortunately, those jobs in our society in the US are often done by lower wage workers, underrepresented individuals in society. And so for my organization, for example, Latinx and AI, that is one of the main focuses of our org as well, is to ensure that people who potentially were working in other areas that are going to be phased out by AI and machine learning have an opportunity to enter into the field, get educated in a different area, and then hopefully be able to rejoin the workforce in a way that will benefit them going forward in the future. So you will see a lot of people transitioning from manual labor into things like software engineering, data science, right? And going from there, and even other related fields like technicians. I did see that, for example, Tesla was putting out a new program to help educate people to work on their autonomous vehicles, and that and they wouldn't have to be software engineers or AI engineers or researchers. They would be what would be more traditionally thought of as a mechanic, and they would have to then transition into having a little bit more background and experience in what does it take to do the manufacturing and maintenance for a more sophisticated vehicle, right? And so there are opportunities like that. And if you look at other areas like retail, for example, you see companies like Lowe's that are now incorporating these types of robots for doing what would be considered manual labor tasks like inventory. So they have these robots come in and actually will scan all of the aisles using computer vision, and then they will indicate what products on the shelves are potentially not going to be available or in stock anymore based on what a person has purchased. There are other systems that actually will track you as you're walking through the store, and it'll see every item that you put into your shopping cart. And then from there, it will update the inventory system saying that these items now need to be ordered as well because this individual is going to purchase them. We've seen this with Amazon Go also, as it uses AI and machine learning in every aspect of its grocery store. So, that's another, simple example of where AI is developed. And those are roles that people have done more traditionally in the past, low-income workers and also younger generations. So it's not just older generations that potentially are going to be phased out, but there are going to be less opportunities for younger people to have simple jobs, right, while they're in high school or, going through college. And so potentially that work experience that people would have traditionally relied on is no longer going to be available. And so over time, people have to transition into new roles that they can actually fulfill in order to meet those needs, whether that is starting from a very young age or potentially as they get older as well, and will need to do something else within the industry.
And these changes, these disruptions in manual labor, they'll likely extend, of course, outside of factories into the farms and probably to a lot of jobs that right now low income people in the Latinx community have. Do you feel
Yes.
like there's widespread awareness about these issues? And do you feel like there are tenable social or governmental plans in place to do something about it?
Well, widespread awareness. It depends on what groups of people you talk to, right? If you're anywhere in Silicon Valley or any tech bubble, honestly, if you talk to most people, they would say they know and understand that these changes are coming down the line. If you talk to people outside of the tech industry, or even the general, what you would consider white collar labor, oftentimes they say, oh, well, that's not really something I'm thinking about, or that's not really going to happen within my lifetime. And on the one hand, in a lot of ways, they're right. Within the very short period of time, it is less likely that these manual labor jobs will be removed entirely within the next 20 or so odd years if they're an older person, right? If they're a very young person, just that's a farmhand or maybe a truck driver, then they potentially will see it happen within their lifetime. But it depends on the group of people. So for example, I was looking at a startup not too long ago called Starsky Robotics. And so they're a company that is looking to develop self-driving trucks and to kind of disrupt the trucking industry. And so the way they want to incorporate this is very different from the other autonomous trucking industries that are out on the market right now. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to utilize a technology very similar to the military, where they actually have an individual who is sitting in like an office type of environment that will still be mostly manning the vehicle, but just from a computer desk, right? And looking at a normal screen, just like any office worker would do. But then there would be certain points, especially when the vehicle is on the highway, for example, where the system will fully take over and the vehicle will be 100% autonomous. I think this is considered level 3 autonomy at that point, because you still have an individual kind of behind the scenes in that case. And so what they liked about this model is it does ensure that the worker is still involved. It actually transitions them from a position where their job was very unhealthy for, they would be driving sometimes 20, or plus hours on end, eating really bad food, not sleeping very much, not seeing their families, to a position that's very similar to anyone else's, where they're working at a desk, they can clock in and clock out during normal hours, and it's a lot less stress and a lot less unhealthy for them to go to. So that's a really great example of what would be a transitional type of environment for someone that, for a company that's going to employ AI and machine learning in a labor job, or a job that would be considered tedious or monotonous, or not something that most people would want to do. When it comes to the manufacturing area, or even farm hands, for example, or people that really work on the agricultural side, they have been incorporating AI and machine learning for quite some time already. And you've seen it in many different ways, and not just specifically with crop yielding, but then also for meat production and for dairy production as well. And in some ways, these changes have actually also been incredibly beneficial. Utilizing computer vision, they can actually use facial recognition technology now on these animals and be able to see even up to the emotions of the animal and say, okay, does this animal look like it's doing well? Does it seem happy by our standards in the environment that it's in? Is it eating regularly? Is it drinking regularly? Might it need medical attention? And so they've actually found that they've been able to improve the lives of these livestock within these different environments, which actually in the long run is benefit for humans, because the meat that is produced from these livestock is actually healthier and tastes better in a lot of ways, because the health of the animal is maintained more properly within the environments as well. So that's another example. When it comes to government intervention for the agricultural aspect, I have seen a lot of examples of governments actually funding educational institutions and programs that are considered non-traditional programs to ensure that people who wouldn't necessarily have access to going into things like a university program will at least be able to go into something like a data science 3-month immersive boot camp, or something that's considered an online program. So the problem you run into is that there are areas of society as well that wouldn't necessarily know about those opportunities, that they would become available to them, or would still be lacking other access to necessary resources, things like a laptop computer, for example, or even a very stable internet access. So if the individual does not have access to those basic necessities in order to attend an online class or enroll in a 3-month immersive boot camp, then potentially they're still going to be left out of the loop. So there are other people and other organizations that are trying to solve that problem as well.
I've often thought about the value of AI as being able to eliminate waste at scale. So whether it's wasted time, opportunities, stress, as you mentioned with animals, resources being allocated in a suboptimal way, which ultimately is a kind of waste. But that all sounds very utopian. What do you worry about when it comes to AI?
Oh boy. That answer has changed so much for me personally as time has gone on, and now I better understand what AI is and what it means and how it is applied, in every day. I think more than anything now, I don't really worry about AI. I don't worry about the technology. I don't worry about the mathematics or the algorithms so much anymore. I worry honestly more about our society and about misinformation that is spread throughout our society, and lack of understanding and comprehension about the technology and the use of the technology. And that's just not only including issues around bias, but then also data privacy, right? Which is a huge, huge problem. There's a recent Netflix documentary that just came out. I won't say the name of it, but basically, it talks about how everything that you do through social media specifically is tracked. And especially for younger people, we're finding the rates of insecurity and depression to increase dramatically. The rates of suicide have gone up an incredible amount because our society has shifted to this dependence on the use of data and the use of these technologies, and also the incentivification of using these technologies because of that data mining that has been taking place over time, because that's oftentimes the way that companies make money through in this day and age, right? If they haven't necessarily found a way to monetize through selling a product, then a lot of people don't realize that they are the product. And really what's being sold and what's generating income for these large companies is their use of that technology and their data that is being mined over time. And so there have been many psychological studies that have come out now, and many unfortunate side effects of the use of this technology on a day-to-day basis. And I think more than anything that scares me, that especially for younger generations, they're not going to realize how much this technology is going to have an effect on them as individuals, and then for us on our larger population. So I think that I especially have made a lot of changes personally over the past several years on my own use of technology. It's definitely gone more to and not just because of who I am professionally, but just as an individual, I do not like to be controlled by, a larger entity. So if I can take more personal control and have more personal awareness about how my information is being used, and also what incentives I am buying into from all of these different companies, whether that be something like a social media platform to get on and post something that might gain likes, or whether that be a e-commerce platform to buy the next big thing because of a sale that's taking place, or who has advertised me because of something that I have talked about with a friend or through a chat message, right? Or if I happen to Google something, the fact that it'll now show up through all of these different platforms and kind of leave a trail that follows me around the internet. I think these are all things that I personally have become hyper aware of, and I think that a lot of other individuals are starting to become aware of these days. And I think that is something that if we don't continue to practice vigilance in and really ensuring that the use of our information it isn't taken for granted, and then also isn't being misused in any way against us. I think that's really going to be the key for us moving forward as a society in the future. Where we need to go in society is we have to develop an AI that is actually a counter to all of these other systems and all these other companies that have been created currently that are mining our data. And so this counter AI, or what some people might consider an adversarial AI, would actually be in the benefit to us personally. And so what it could do is act as like a guardian angel to us as individuals, and actually charge companies every time they actually mine our data or take information from us and are generating income based on what we do on the internet. So it's kind of a new idea that is floating around, and something that maybe you all could consider as well as you go forward using AI in your future.
Well, until we have this adversarial guardian angel, do you have any pro tips to share on how we can safeguard our data from being mined?
Yeah, so definitely ensure that any technology that you use, any app that you download, anything you sign up for follows GDPR privacy laws. You want to ensure that you do actually read the terms of use, and that you understand what you're signing up for. I think is one very big way to ensure that these companies are respecting your privacy and aren't going to use your information in a way that potentially could be harmful to you. Do ensure that if you see a company tracking your interests or likes or what you search for in other parts of the internet, that you are okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, then you have to ensure that you actually do disconnect from that app, that you delete your account, that you undownload it, so that it's no longer part of your fabric and part of your daily life. So in that way, you're kind of becoming your own guardian angel, right? And saying, okay, if I'm not okay with the use of my data in this way, then I'm not going to buy into these services. Because instead of paying with your money in this case, right, which is oftentimes how a lot of people would protest the misuse of a company or something that a company they didn't like a company was doing. Now you can say, well, I'm not going to use your service. I'm not going to participate in this use of my information. And that's the simplest form or action that you can take to ensure that your privacy is respected in this case.
So for people that may be either within tech companies, maybe on the periphery or in a very different area, how would you, if they wanted to learn more about AI or transition into AI, what would you recommend? Do you feel like boot camps and those sorts of things adequately address some of the ethical issues you're talking about as well, or is it just technical proficiency?
Yeah, I think that there is no way for boot camp to address the ethical issues of developing software or algorithms, because they don't necessarily have the time to address the technological aspects of developing these technologies, right? They're so crunched within what they can cover as far as a curriculum is concerned, not to say that what people are learning within these programs isn't helpful, right? And wouldn't potentially allow them to transition and further their learning in a career in software engineering or data science or what have you, or virtual or augmented reality, whatever area they're interested in. But and simply talking about an issue just like today, right? We're having this wonderful fireside chat, and maybe you've heard a few things that you were not aware of from me today. But that's not the end of the conversation, right? That doesn't mean everything that there is to know about this subject, or the potential harms that AI can cause, or the benefits that AI can have as well, right? It would then be up to you as an individual to go forward with that curiosity, with this new information, and continue to research for yourself, to explore, and then also to confirm what I've said, right? To not just take me at face value, and to ensure that everything makes sense, and that this is all accurate and does apply to the applications that you're using, or what you do in your day-to-day life. And so similarly, I think even at a university level, not enough universities have been teaching things like ethics and morals alongside computer science courses, right? Only more recently have some universities started coupling, these ideas and these courses, and really making it mandatory for students to have to take at least one ethics course. And then again, who says that one ethics course is enough? When you're developing technology that's going to scale and going to be used by potentially, hopefully, millions of people around the world, right? And how many things can't you take into consideration? And even some of the largest companies that think about this every day and have whole departments dedicated to the impact and the ethics of artificial intelligence on our society, they still struggle with the use of their applications once it's put into the industry. So there is no, just enough period of time, no, small checkbox of, this gets you certified as, right? You have to continue that search and that inquiry and that curiosity, and not only about and through our society, but of yourself. Is what I'm doing right now going to have an impact on the rest of the world? And is that impact going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Is there a potential that this work could cause harm in any way, right? And most people don't have that foresight. And unfortunately, it does take something getting into the real world, right? An application being used and being published in the real world before people really see the repercussions that potentially can come of the use of that technology. And so then it's up to those companies to take action as quickly as possible, and then also to take responsibility. How can we have some type of policy or guardrails in place to ensure that that doesn't happen? And then when and if eventually does, because something will always eventually go wrong, what are we going to do to ensure that we stop that as quickly as possible, so that doesn't cause greater harm? Because no system is perfect, right? And you will never be able to consider everyone in every situation, but you can do your best to try as hard as you can, and then from there continue to try and do the work, right, going forward in the future.
And it seems like a hard issue that requires kind of eternal vigilance. I mean, there's already so much opportunistic silence and omission in companies when something that may be beneficial but's going on under the radar. It's just people don't talk about it. Now with AI, where you don't need to hard code things explicitly, you can blame the representations, right? Oh, it learned these representations and then it produced these results, and we did not train it explicitly to do that. But it's a hard system to interpret, and we can't control for all of that. So I think the issue of corporate responsibility is very interesting here, when a lot of people can just blame the dynamism of these systems. So
yes, indeed.
so what are the projects of yours that you think we should be paying attention to? What are the things you're most excited about?
Yeah, we have a lot of things that are coming in the works right now, honestly, and a lot of ongoing projects and programs that would be very valuable for anyone in the field to get involved with. With, Accel AI Institute, we're doing some really more fundamental research, so we're a little less public about the work that we're doing with that specific organization, but from an outward perspective, a lot of the work that we're doing with the Latinx and AI programs are actually very public, and so those are things that you should get involved with, and we hope to gain more individuals who identify as Latinx working in AI, but then also allies in the industry that want to join and support our work and our programs. So most recently, what's coming up is our next workshop at the Neural Information Processing Systems Conference. So that obviously is going to be our third year that we're hosting there, so we're very excited to do that. We also have our mentorship program that I described earlier. That would be a great way to get involved. Again, whether you identify as Latinx or not, we love allies to get involved as mentors if you have experience within the area. If you don't identify as Latinx, but you would like mentorship in this field, please do reach out to one of our affiliated organizations, the Black in AI organization, the Women in Machine Learning organization, the Queer in AI organization, and so on. Because they are also running similar programs and would love to have you get involved and would love to support your community there at Chegg as well. And then after that, there is one specific area of research that I'm a little excited about that I think will gain a lot more popularity in the future. This is not specifically involved with Accel AI or the Latinx and AI organization, but it involves some other key initiatives that I'm involved with, including at the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard.
Laura, it's been a lot of fun, and I feel like we could go through so many of these issues for all day.
Yes.
We are at time, and I just want to thank you for sharing with us. I think it's been enormously beneficial for me, and I imagine for our listeners as well. Thank you again, and thank you for the invitation to participate in your programs and to learn more about the incredible work that you're doing.
Of course, thank you all very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. I hope that if anyone does want to reach out or has any other further questions, I am very reachable through the internet on Twitter. You can find me at Quick Resolve, or you can just go to my website, lauranmontoya.com, or send me an email. That would be fine as well.
All right. Well, thank you again, and have a great week.
Yes, you as well. Thank you, everyone.